Hi guys, in this video I'm going to introduce you to the if function. It falls into the logical, one of the logical functions in Excel. Before we do that, go to excelvbasql.com. There's over 25 hours of free lessons to teach you everything you need to know about Excel from the beginner to the advanced level. Put your email in here and we'll send you an email when new videos go up. So let's get started. Well, let me just go back to the website real quick. In the Excel video library, there's this lesson 3 that covers the intro to functions. So if you don't know what a function is, go watch this video. And now we could start. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is the if function. So let me clear this stuff out. I'll just drag this up here. Let me actually delete these. Okay, so we have our data, and if you don't know where this data from, I covered it in other videos, but it's just dummy data with, you could say like we took a survey of 100 people, and here's their name, their street, their city, their state, their zip code, country, email, phone, the date of when we took this data, and then some description with some dummy text in it. Their salary, their favorite color, their marital status, number of kids, and then who they work for and what department they work in. So what we're going to do today is cover the if statement. So let's take a look at the if statement, and the if function, and the if function falls under the logical category here. So if I select logical from this drop-down list, here it is, the if, and I'll click OK, and now it'll show me, the function arguments. So remember, a function, you can think of it as a black box, right? You pass in some input, it gives you some output. In this case, the input that we need to pass in is a test, what's called a logical test, and the logical test could be anything. It could be like when they say test, it could be like this: does 1 equal 1? And that's a logical test because it's testing this condition, does 1 equal 1? And the result is going to be true. And that's what you pass in. And then you also have to pass in, okay, I passed in a test, 1 equal to 1. What happens if the value is true? Well, if it's true, then I'm going to return, let me write the word yes. Then I'll put 1 does equal 1. And if it doesn't, then I'm gonna write a sentence that says no. 1 does not equal, or I'll just put 1. No, they are not equal. And yes, they are equal. So what you need to pass in as arguments to this if function is a test, and then you need to pass in a value if true, which is what you see here. They say pass in a value if true, and then a value if false. And actually the value if false is optional, but you definitely need a value if true. So in this case, I passed in the test 1 equal 1. And if that's true, I'm going to get some text that reads yes, they are equal. And if it's not true, I'm going to get a text that reads no, they are not equal. And you can see the formula result down here is yes, they are equal. So this is one of the most widely used functions in Excel is the if function, because it's pretty powerful, because you can perform tests like this, and you could be returned a value if it's true and a value if it's false. And that's all this description down here says. It says this function checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if it's true. That would be this value up here, the value if true, and another value if it's false. And notice here that it says value if true is the value that is returned if the logical test is true. If omitted, true is returned and you could nest up to 7 if functions. So you could. What do they mean by you can nest up to 7 if functions? Well, over here, you could say you could put an if. You could put another if function here. If let's see. If well, we'll get to that in a second. It's easier for me to do a different example. I'll do a better example for this. But here you see that this is a simple if function example. And so if I click OK, in this cell here, I get the text that reads yes, they are equal. And if I go to the formula bar, this is what the if function looks like. If I click on the formula bar, you could see that the if function, you write equals if, open parentheses, and then here's your test. What do you want to test? Well, I want to test does 1 equal 1, and you could see that's a logical test here. And then you put a comma, and the next thing you write is the value if it's true. And if it's true, I want to write yes, they are equal. Remember to put the quotation marks around, because if it's a string, you want to put the quotation marks. And then if it's false, you put you need a value if it's false, which is what you see here. So you follow the value of true by a comma, and then you put the value if it's false. And I put text here, so remember to put the quotations. So if I put 1 equal to 9 and I hit enter, then the formula evaluates to no, they are not equal. And that's what you expect, because if 1 equals to 9, well, that test evaluates to false, so it falls into the value if false statement, which is no, they are not equal. So we have just seen how the if function works. You provide a logical test that evaluates to true or false, and then you provide values that if it's true, you want the value if true to be returned, and if it's false, you want the value if false to be returned. Now, the value if true and value if false, they can be anything. So they don't need to be text, they can be numbers. So if 1 doesn't equal 9, let's say I'll return the value 1,000. And if 1 equals 9, if that's true, I'll return 1,000. And if it's false, I'll return 5,000. So they could be numbers as well. So if I hit enter here, then I'm going to get the value 5,000. Okay. So now you have an intuitive understanding of what this if function does. So let's use some of our dummy data here. Okay. So I'm going to delete this. And in our data, we have a column for salary. So we have 100 people, and these are their salaries. So maybe what you want to find out, let me just hide some of these columns. I'm going to hide these 2 columns here by highlighting them. So to hide a column, you just highlight the columns and you right click and you go to hide. So now I have a salary for a person and the number of kids. And let's work with this salary column first. So let's write another column here, and we'll name this column salary over 100K. So we want to know who has a salary over $100,000. So to do that, we can do an if function, and we could do this. We could do equals, and then we select this cell, K2. Oh, we got to put an if statement first. So we put if equals if, and then open parentheses. Now what's my logical test going to be? Well, it's going to be, is the salary greater than 100,000? So I can reference the cell K2 by just doing that. If K2 is greater than 100,000, then I'll return a value. If true, I'll return yes over 100K. And if it's false, I'll return no, under 100K. So this is my if function. I'm testing my logical test that evaluates to true or false is this statement right here. K2 greater than 100,000. It's important to understand what they mean by logical test. That means that the test returns either true or false. It's only one or the other. And that's what this statement is. It's returning one or the other. It's either going to be true that K2 is greater than 100,000 or it's going to be false. And that allows this function to work because then you have a value if true and a value if false. So it's a pretty easy function to understand. It's very intuitive. You have a test that evaluates to true or false, and if it evaluates to true, you can return something here, and you can return something if it's false here. Remember to separate the logical test and the value of true and the value of false by commas. Okay, see these commas down here? You need to have them to separate them. Okay, so we wrote our if function. We said if K2 is greater than 100,000, then give me this statement, yes, over 100K. And if it's not, then give me this statement, no, under 100K. And if I hit enter, here's what it evaluates to. Yes, over 100K. So we know that this person is over 100K for their salary. And if we just do autofill on this, so I'm just going to go to this lower right corner and double click, then we get yes over 100K, yes over 100K, and then we get no under 100K, no under 100K. So if I click on this, now the formula is K5 greater than 100,000? And that evaluates, this logical test evaluates to false, so it falls into the value if false. It falls into the value if false condition, which means that it's going to say no under 100K. So you could see what we have here. We have our data that has 100 people in it, and we're able to very easily see who is over 100K and who is under 100K. And if I scroll down, you'll see that it's either going to be yes over 100K or no under 100K. And they're all correct, right? So here we have a no under 100K because it's 18,000, because K28, is that greater than 100,000? No, so it evaluates to the false condition. These other ones, they evaluate to yes. But it's very intuitive, this if function, and it's very, very powerful, very useful. So that's one example of how to use the if function with some real data. Remember back here in this function wizard area where you can go and get more information on a function by clicking this FX button. It says that let's see. Actually, I want to go here. I want to go here, and I want to go back to this if. And here's actually, where was that at? Well, we saw in the first window that popped up that it said that 7 if statements can be nested. So now we'll look at nesting some if statements. So here's my data for 100 people that have their information and things. But let's say we have some other data on this grades tab. Let's say I have a class and I have 4 students and they have final scores for the class. George got a 98 in the class, Mary got a 76, Tom got a 50, and Bob got an 88. So let's write an if statement that will assign a grade to these students. Let's just write one, not an if statement, let's just write one if function that will assign a grade, and we're going to be nesting if. So let's start this off. So let's start real simple. So let's say something like if cell B2 is greater than 90, then I want to assign a value of A. Else, oh, here I'll show you that the false condition, the value of false is optional. So if I hit enter right now, I only provided a value if true. I didn't provide this value, but it's optional. So if I hit enter, it gives me A for George. So is B2 greater than 90? That evaluates to true, so it falls into the value if true. If I drag this formula down, I get false, false, and false, because all these grades here, 76, is 76 in B3 greater than 90? No, it's not. So it would fall into the value of false, but since I didn't provide one, it just returns false. Okay, so now let's deal with that. So let's go back up here and let's do something else. Let's do if B2 is greater than 90, then A, and I'll put another comma, and I'll write another if function. I'll say if B2 is greater than 80, then return B. And you have to remember when you write nested if statements like this is called nesting them, because notice what you're doing. You're putting one inside another, like a bird's nest or something. I guess that's the analogy, is that you're putting things inside of stuff, like a nest. So this if statement here is nested within this if statement here. So now we have two. I keep saying if statements, but they're really if functions. I should say functions. So sorry about that, but if functions. So I have one if function here that is nested within this other if function here. And notice what's going on. Is B2 greater than 90? If that's true, it's going to return the value A. If it's not true, it's then going to look at this next if function, and it's going to say if B2 is greater than 80, then return B. And then we could hit enter right now, and we could drag this down again. And now I'm getting closer to what I want, right? Because I want to assign a grade to every student in the class. So I can further do another if statement here. I have to be careful though, because I want to do another if statement right here in this value if false. So I'm nesting now another if function within this if function. So I'll do if B2 is greater than 70, then I want to assign the value C. And if that's false, I'll do another one. I'll do if B2 is greater than 60, then I'll assign a value D. And then I'll do the final value if false, I'll just assign F. And if I close this, notice this nesting if statements gets a bit tricky, because you got a lot of parentheses going on. So you have to be careful. But what's going on here is, here's my first if function, and in the false value of false, in the first value of false, I write another if function that it goes from, let's see, we need another formula here. We need another parentheses. So you could sort of check what's going on by the parentheses, because okay, I have this if function. I'm trying to highlight these. That is this outer parentheses, this black one. The green one goes from here all the way to here. So these green parentheses are nested within the black, and then in the false statement of the green, and the value of false of this green if function, I have this purple parentheses, and that goes from here to here. So that's nested within this if function. And then I have another if function, this red parentheses that's nested within the purple parentheses. So it gets a little confusing. It's pretty tricky when you first try to do it, but it's really easy after a couple times. So if I hit enter now and I copy this down, then look what happens. Now I'm assigning a grade to every student. So I have an A grade for people who are over 90. I have a B grade for people who are over 80. A C grade for people who are over 70. I don't have a D grade, but I can make one. I'll put Tom. Oh, no, I did Tom already. I'll put Joe. And a D grade would be like, yeah, I guess a D grade would be, yeah. So I copied it down, so there's the D. So anyone over 90 gets an A. Anyone over 80 gets a B. If I put 80 here, it's a C because I didn't put the equal sign. That's important, right? So you have to be aware of that. How do you make it so 80 or above? Well, you just put an equal sign here. And if I want 90 or above, you put an equal sign here. If you want 70 or above, or 70 and above, here, and an equal sign here. So now I'll get a B. So if I put 90 in here, I get a, oh, I didn't copy it up. Let me copy this up. So I'm dragging it by just dragging this corner. So anyone with a 90 or above gets an A. Anyone with, let's say this person gets an 80, and this person gets a 70, and this person gets a 60, and this person gets a 50. So now I have my grades, right? If I get a 91, you still get an A. If you get an 81, you still get a B. 71 still gets a C. 61 still gets a D. And 51 still gets an F. And we did that by using these nested, remember it's called nesting if statements. Nested if statements. And this is a very simple example of nested if statements. They can be very, very complex. Notice that this looks like a very long formula that uses many if functions, but it's really not. Once you become a powerful Excel user, your formulas can go on, they could go on for hundreds and hundreds of characters because it gets complicated. But the idea is very simple. You have a logical test, and then you have a value if it's true and a value if it's false. And you can, if you want to, you can nest other if functions within an if function. So it's possible to do something like this. So that is nested if statements. Now this might be complicated to look at. But what's going on is at every value if false, I keep doing another if statement. So here is a value if false. I do a complete if statement from here all the way. Well, I do an if statement, and then within that if statement at the value if false level, I do another if statement, and then within that if statement, here's the value if false, I do another if statement. And in the final value if false, I just put F. So at every value if false, I go, is it greater than 90? And if it's true, then I do another test. Is it greater than 80? And if it's true, I give it a B. If it's not, I do another test. If it's greater than 70. If it's true, I give a C. And if it's not, I do another test. If it's greater than 60. If it's true, I give a D. And finally, I don't care anymore about the scores. Anyone who's below a 60, I'm just going to give an F. And it works out just like I wanted to. So here's my assigning of grades. We can, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 nested, or that's 3 nested if statements there. 4 if functions in total. 3 of them are nested within this first one. So that's pretty complicated because there's 4 if functions, and this might seem very hard to understand, but it's really not. You really need to get a hold of this. If you're going to be an Excel expert and someone who really can do a lot with Excel, you got to be able to understand this. And if you understand this, you can understand pretty much anything in Excel because it's pretty straightforward. But I would recommend writing this out, or if you want to download this workbook, you could download it and you could play around with it and see what's going on. So let me do one more nested if example, a simpler one. So let's modify this and say we want to know people who make over 100,000, and let's see if it's over 100,000. We want to know people who make over 100,000 and we could do something like, let's see. Okay, so we could do this. We could say, because living in Illinois is more expensive than living in Kansas. Let's say that's the case, that living in Illinois is more expensive than living in Kansas. So what we want to do is modify this and say if we could do something like this. We could say if the state is equal to Illinois, then we can do an if statement that says if the salary is greater than 150,000, then the value of true is, I'm going to put yes, you are wealthy. Else, no, you are not wealthy. Now this is completely nonsense, right? I'm just writing stuff. I'm not trying to tell people that they're wealthy or not. I'll make this like tax bracket. Let's say you are trying to market to these people, and anyone who reaches some level, you want to be able to say you're my target audience. So in Illinois, if the target to be in that target audience is 150,000, so here's my if statement that'll say if you're in Illinois, if that's true, then if your salary is greater than 150,000, then you're the target audience. And that's my if statement. But notice, here's my value of true. Now I can write a value of false. So if you're not in Illinois, I could just copy this if statement and then I'll change this to 100,000. So if you're not in Illinois, so here's my test. Are you in Illinois? If you are, then I apply this, 150,000. If you're not in Illinois, then I apply this, 100,000. Okay? So my threshold for saying you're my target audience, in Illinois it's 150,000, and everywhere else it's 100,000. So that might be something, I don't know, that if you're selling things in different states, this might be something applicable. But the point is, I want to show you another nested if example that if we hit enter now, So this person, it says they are in the target audience, and that's because they live in Idaho, right? So let me change their salary. If their salary was 80,000, then they are not target, right? Now let's copy this down. I'll just do autofill. And let's find someone who lives in Illinois. So here we have this person right here. They live in Illinois and their salary is 11,000. So they're not target. If I take them up to 125,000, they're still not target. If they live somewhere else, they would be target. But since they live in Illinois, the threshold is 150. So once I write 150, well, they're still not target. That's because I didn't put the equal sign here. So I have to put equals. And I'll put equals over here too. Greater than or equals. So now, because they live in Illinois, and since I changed that formula, I have to drag it up and copy it down. Let me do that again right here. Put the equal sign here, put the equal sign here. So this third person here who makes 150,000, they live in Illinois, this person right here, and it's 150,000. If you go below that, 140,000, they're not target. So the title of this column should be something like over threshold and target audience. So you could see that using if statements, it's powerful because you can do a ton of stuff. You can say any kind of test you want to do that returns a true or false. You can do that in Excel. It's really powerful. You could say does this person have, let's do one more, really simple, more than 3 kids. So how would we do this? How would you find out who has more than 3 kids? Well, you would just write an if function, like if this value of n2 is greater than or equal to 3, or no, because I said more than, just do greater than 3, then yes. So this is a very simple if function that says, that tests the number of kids, and if it's greater than 3, you return yes, and if it's not, then you return no, and you close your if function like this. So here's my if function. If n2 is greater than 3, then yes, they have more than 3 kids. If not, then no. And here's your answer. More than 3 kids, yes, because it's 4. I'll do autofill again. Just double click the lower right corner. And anyone who has the number of kids is greater than 3, it's going to return yes. So here's yeses. This is not greater than 3. This is greater than 3. This is not greater than 3. It's equal to 3, so it still returns no. So you could see the if function is it's huge. It might be the most widely used function in Excel. Before I said it's one of the most widely used, but it might be the most widely used. I mean, if someone would ask me what do you think is the most widely used, I would say the if function, because it's powerful, because you can test. Doing logical tests is something you're going to need to do all the time when you're analyzing data. You're going to want to do these logical tests. And nesting things like this, or if that's too confusing, this might be a better way to understand nesting if functions. That's really powerful too, because you can do many logical tests. So that's all I wanted to show you about the if function in Excel. If you want to download this file, you can. What I'm going to do is take the file and post it on excelvbasequel.com. I'll post it up here and enter your email here. One thing before I sign off is that I did talk about this function first for a reason. And that's because once you understand the if function, it really allows you to do a ton of powerful stuff. So notice here that our test is a simple reference to a cell. It's referencing n2. It's saying, is n2 greater than 3? Well, I wanted to show you the if function first because this test here, it can be any of the other functions, which happens all the time, that the test you're going to use relies on other functions. So that's why I showed you this first. It's because you're going to be using other functions within if statements all the time. As the logical test, as well as the value if true and the value if false, you're going to be using all kinds of other functions inside these inside the parentheses of the if function. So that's why I showed you it first, and you should be aware of that the if function is used so frequently, and it's used in conjunction with all the other functions to do these logical tests and return values. So that's all I wanted to show you for this. Okay, so go to excelvbasql.com. Contact me if you have any questions. Again, you can download this file and play around with it. Until the next video, let me just talk about the next video. So I'm going to be putting up more videos on these functions. The next video will continue with the other logical functions like and or and not and all the other ones that return true or false and that are used. And we'll do more examples with the live data. Okay, so have a good day, and contact me again if you have any questions.